Let's jump right into this explainer because today we are unpacking a completely unprecedented, literally terrifying aviation mystery. The sheer science, the incredibly high-stakes problem-solving, and just the raw human resilience you're about to hear about, it's absolutely mind-blowing. So let's get into it. So I want you to picture this. What happens when a massive 747 jumbo jet suddenly loses all 4 of its engines while cruising at 37,000 feet? I mean, it's the ultimate nightmare scenario, right? Well, for the 263 passengers and crew on board British Airways Flight 9, this terrifying hypothetical became an absolute, real-life, high-stakes reality. Section 1. A routine flight turns bizarre. So the date is June 24th, 1982. We're at a completely peaceful cruising altitude of over 11,000 meters. That's about 37,000 feet, flying through the pitch-black night skies of Indonesia. The passengers are just settling in, heading to Perth, Australia. Captain Eric Moody and his highly trained crew, they're experiencing smooth sailing. But you know, that quiet peace? It's about to be completely shattered. Right out of nowhere, these bizarre sensory symptoms just hit the aircraft at scale. First, there's this thick, acrid smoke, smelling pretty strongly of electrical sulfur, and it starts pouring right into the passenger cabin. It's hot, people's eyes are watering, the crew is frantically searching for a smoldering fire, but they find absolutely nothing. Then, outside the cockpit windows, this brilliant, shimmering white light, it's known as St. Elmo's fire, starts clinging to the plane's wings. And then, the most terrifying detail of the whole shebang, massive 40-foot jets of sheer flame start shooting out of the back of the engines, literally lighting up the night sky. This created a really terrifying paradox for the crew. In their visual reality, they're completely surrounded by blazing light, suffocation-level smoke in the cabin, and enormous flames roaring from the engines. But if you look over at their radar reality, the weather instruments insisted the skies were completely 100% clear. St. Elmo's fire normally only happens in highly charged thunderclouds, but there were no storms on the radar. Nothing that should be causing this terrifying light show or these severe engine troubles. It was, theoretically anyway, a perfectly clear night. Section 2. All 4 engines fail. Because unfortunately, that bizarre light show and the sulfurous smoke, they were really just the preamble to the absolute worst-case scenario unfolding up there. This cascade of failure happened unbelievably fast, like blink and you miss it fast. At 0 seconds, engine number 4 violently surges and flames out. The crew immediately runs through the standard drill to shut it down. But wait, just 30 seconds later, engine number 2 completely fails. And then within a total window of just 90 seconds, all 4 massive Rolls-Royce engines make this terrible grating noise, almost like a giant cement mixer, and then become completely, terrifyingly silent. 15. That is the grim math of their powerless descent. See, even without any engines, a 747 is aerodynamically designed to glide forward 15 kilometers for every 1 kilometer it drops in altitude. Which sounds okay until you realize that starting from 10 kilometers up in the sky, that mathematical reality gave the crew less than half an hour of falling through the air before their massive jumbo jet would smash right into the dark waters of the Indian Ocean. Section 3. Plunging toward the ocean. So inside this pitch-black cockpit, some really frantic but highly disciplined problem-solving was happening as the clock aggressively ticked down and the terrifying silence of the cabin just pressed in all around them. Normally, a standard engine restart sequence takes up to 3 whole minutes to complete. But, I mean, when you're plummeting from the sky with limited chances before hitting the water, you don't have 3 minutes. First Officer Roger Greaves and Flight Engineer Barry Townley Freeman drastically shortened the procedure just to buy themselves more attempts. Battery check on, cross-feed valves open, fire switch in. They just executed this desperate restart drill over and over and over again in the dark. 50. That is the staggering estimated number of times the flight crew meticulously repeated that restart drill as they fell from the sky. It really highlights an almost superhuman, relentless fight for survival. The crew were actually battling overwhelming personal guilt at the time. They thought they had somehow made an error that caused the entire aircraft to fail. But they pushed that aside, dug deep, and never stopped working the problem. But as you probably know, in emergencies, disasters tend to compound. First, the airspeed indicators broke. They were showing a massive 50-knot difference between the captain's and the first officer's instruments. And to successfully restart the engines, the plane actually must be flying at an exact speed. This forced Captain Moody into a terrifying roller coaster motion, literally pulling up, then diving down, just trying to guess the right velocity. Then, without engine power, the cabin pressure steadily leaked away. Oxygen masks dropped for the terrified passengers. But in the cockpit, the first officer's oxygen mask completely snapped and broke. To allow his co-pilot to breathe, Captain Moody had absolutely no choice but to deliberately execute a steep, terrifying dive, dropping 6,000 feet in just a single minute. Section 4. The impossible restart. Okay, so now they are rapidly approaching the jagged 3,500-meter mountains on the southern coast of the island of Java. The plane is sinking past 4,000 meters. Captain Moody is literally seconds away from making the brutal decision to turn back toward the sea and attempt a highly dangerous water landing in total darkness, simply because they aren't going to clear those mountain peaks. But then one passenger captured the sheer relief of that turning point perfectly. They recalled there was this sort of like somebody give the planet a punch from underneath, the noise that a Rolls-Royce engine makes. It was wonderful to hear it. Against all mathematical odds, you guys, after dozens of failed attempts, engine number 4 suddenly boomed back to life. Then engine 3, then the final 2. The crippled jet was miraculously back under full power. But the ordeal wasn't quite over, not yet. They were effectively landing blind. As they approached the airport in Jakarta, they discovered the windshield was completely sandblasted opaque, like the glass was totally destroyed by something outside. Furthermore, the electronic glide path, the thing that tells pilots their descent angle, wasn't working either. So to survive, the crew had to pull off a miraculous manual landing, with the captain literally peering out the window through a tiny 2-inch clear strip on the far edge of the damaged glass. And incredibly, they kissed the earth. They actually made it. Section 5. The invisible culprit. Now that Flight 9 is safely parked on the ground in Jakarta, we get into the really fascinating scientific forensic investigation. Because remember, no fire was ever actually found on board, yet the plane's outer paint was completely stripped off, and the engines were totally destroyed inside. So we are going in search of this invisible culprit. Turns out the culprit was volcanic ash. And actually, scratch that image of the soft, flaky ash you'd find in your fireplace. That's not what this is. Volcanic ash consists of very fine, ground-up particles of solid rock and minerals. It is extremely dry, highly abrasive, and if you look under a microscope, it's completely filled with sharp, jagged, angular shapes. That night, Mount Galunggung, an active volcano, had erupted, blasting this destructive rock dust 15,000 meters into the night sky, sitting right there in their flight path. And this perfectly explains our central mystery. Why did the pilots' radar show a perfectly clear night when they were flying right into a massive cloud? Well, standard weather radar is specifically designed to bounce off water droplets and wet storm clouds. But a volcanic ash cloud, it's made of incredibly dry rock. Because there's zero moisture, the radar waves just pass right through it, completely rendering this massive, deadly cloud invisible to the crew on their screens. Isn't that wild? The anatomy of the flame out here is absolutely fascinating. See, jet engines operate at extremely high temperatures, around 2,000 degrees Celsius. However, volcanic ash melts at about 1,300 to 1,400 degrees. So as those massive engines sucked in the invisible rock dust, it instantly melted into this sticky, molten goo that coated and choked the entire engine core. This deeply disrupted the airflow, which caused those violent backfires, the 40-foot flames the passengers saw out the window, and ultimately it just choked the engines to death. But here is the ultimate, mind-bending scientific irony of the whole thing. The terrifying engine failure itself, it was the exact mechanism that saved everyone's lives. When the engines shut down, they naturally cooled off. As the temperature inside dropped below the ash's melting point, that molten rock hardened, cracked, and became incredibly brittle. The sheer force of the air rushing through the dead engines as they plummeted then broke the hardened ash off, essentially cleaning the engines out as they fell, and finally allowing that life-saving restart just in the nick of time. I mean, science is incredible, right? Section 6. A lasting aviation legacy. Because this terrifying night in 1982 wasn't just a miracle of survival, it fundamentally changed how we fly today. The forensic investigation led to massive changes globally. As aviation experts noted at the time, we have learned quite a bit, and we've incorporated this learning into pilot training. Today, pilots worldwide are specifically trained on the unique sensory clues of invisible volcanic ash. If they smell electrical sulfur, or if they see St. Elmo's fire on the windshield on a perfectly clear night, they now know an invisible engine-killing ash cloud is present, and this is thanks entirely to the harrowing ordeal of Flight 9. Plus, geologists and airlines now communicate directly to track volcanic plumes, so planes are routed safely around them. A real game changer. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. Knowing the invisible, microscopic, and incredibly abrasive dangers that can lurk in a perfectly clear night sky, how will you look out the window the next time you fly? This whole story is just such a testament to human resilience and the awesome hidden forces of nature. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you on the next one.